Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen, joined by my usual broadcast partner, former and
A little freeze up there for Kevin. He'll be back in a second. So this is the Laidlaw Allen report. You froze up for a second there, brother?
yeah, I did. Yeah, and come to you twice a week to talk all things hockey. And I usually don't get blipped out this early, but I did. For those of you who are noting, I got a little Band-Aid on my nose. I had a little procedure done on my nose. Nothing to worry about. We'll be back to normal at some point, but for now, you got to put up a little Band-Aid. So,
Did your wife perform that little surgery? She can do everything else, right? She fixes.
no, she did not do that surgery, but she actually has been Nurse Terry. It's
Right.
it's a little bit ugly, and it's hard for me to get the Band-Aid on right. Even in a mirror, it feels backwards.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So she's had to do at it. So
There's nothing she cannot do.
yep, there is nothing she cannot do. That is true. She could do the podcast as well.
Profit, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to start out talking about the NFL because I never get to talk about the Detroit Lions, but they came into New York and they thumped a pretty darn good New York Giants team. And Jones, I thought, played really well, and Lions still beat them. That's 3 in a row for the Lions. Worst defensive team in the league, according to statistics, but they haven't played like that the last couple of weeks.
Wow. They played hard, yeah. They really handed it to the Giants, and I'm a big Giants fan too. And I thought early, you're right. I thought the Giants were going to do all right, but Detroit played hard. They really played hard for that coach.
Yeah, no, it was like one of those things where it just kind of all came together because they're really not a very good football team. I think offensively, they're kind of halfway there.
Right.
But they've got some talented players.
Sure.
Jamal Williams and Swift is a good player.
Yeah.
So.
And I thought Goff played better than I thought he was. I didn't think he was that good of a quarterback. He played well yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mind Goff, but I'm on an island in Detroit. They're waiting for the time when the Lions can draft a quarterback. The fan base is here. They had Matthew Stafford for a long time, and he was a very good quarterback. Just never really had a team.
Yeah.
And Goff, hasn't been able to produce the way that Stafford has. Yeah. But anyway, it was a big win. It was a fun, entertaining game, and it came the day after the University of Michigan football team played.
Ohio State, is it?
Yeah, no. Ohio State is this week.
Okay.
They played Illinois, and Illinois really easily could have won it, but Michigan managed to win it on a last-second field goal, and had to, Jim Harbaugh, the coach, had to make a difficult decision. This is what I love about sports. Yeah. There comes a time when a coach has to make a decision about what to do, and it was late in the game, 3+ minutes left. They got down inside the 20, but they couldn't punch it in. It was 4th and short. Do you go for it and try to get it done now, or do you kick a field goal knowing then a field goal would win it for you? He had faith in his defense. He decided to kick the field goal, and that's exactly what happened. They got to stop. They had one of the best kickers in the nation, and then they came back and kicked it down. It was one of those games. It was an ugly win. Probably didn't deserve to win it, but they did win it, and I guess that's what happens when you're to get a perfect season. So anyway, we're off the beaten track, talking not about hockey but about football. But we got stuff to talk about in football, and I'm interested because I think I know the answer to this, but we've rarely talked about him, and that is Evgeny Malkin. I'm assuming you like him.
Yes.
He's one of your your good guys. But last night was his 1,000th game, and my take on Malkin is that he's got the short shrift simply because he's been sort of a supporting cast member of the Ovechkin versus Crosby show.
Yep, totally.
And he's a great player. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer. I think back to 2017 when he was left off the top 100 list. I find that unforgivable.
No kidding. I didn't realize that. He wasn't on that list. Oh, wow.
Yeah, did not make that list. I would say he's in the top 50.
Oh, yeah, totally. And he's a competitive guy, too. Like, he's almost too competitive sometimes. He gets himself in trouble with some penalties.
Yeah, he gets penalties. Yeah. I mean, you look at the most active scoring leaders in the NHL, and he's there. Of course, he's fourth fourth in goals, third in points. But nobody's got penalty minutes like
Yeah.
he.
Yeah. Totally. He's fiery. Yeah.
Like he's up there on the all-time list of penalty minutes.
Yeah. It's not cheap stuff either. Like he gets involved. Yeah.
Yeah. No, he's a big guy. He's a big guy. So, but anyway, for those of you who didn't read about it or see it on television, he seems to be quite popular with his teammates because they decided that Gino has as he's called, that's his nickname there. Gino has a very unique way of doing his pregame stretch. He gets on the ice and he does some scissor kicks with his legs and he gets on his back and all this kind of stuff. So all of his teammates came out, and when Gino got into his pose, they all hit the ice and they all did it.
That's good. That's classic. I like that.
Yeah. So anyway, I thought it was really classy. I think that's the right word, Tom. Okay. And then apparently he did not know this either. They brought in his son, who looked to be 7-ish, 6, 7-ish,
right?
And he read the lineup in the dressing room.
Oh, very cool. I like when they do that. I've seen the fathers do that before. The mothers have done it in the past.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and he did it perfectly. His name is Nikita Malkin. Yeah. And then, of course, Malkin scored. But I thought what capped it off, given what I've said about how, he sort of has lived in the shadow of the Ovechkin. And I'm not saying that, nobody knows he's a great player. Everybody. Yeah. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm just saying, if he had been by himself, we would exalt him more than we normally do. Right. But he had Crosby on his team and he had Ovechkin in the same division. So, given all that, I thought it was somewhat comical, perfect, fitting that at the end when they made him player of the game. And again, the Penguins tried to blow it, which is fitting for their season this year. Right. But Crosby had a goal and 3 assists. So when he got player of the game, what did he do? He thanked Sid. He thanked him for saving the day. And, that's just so Malkin.
Yeah. He seems like he's got a great sense of humor, too. Yeah.
Yeah. I like him. So, and, I think they're all friends. I mean, I think that Letang, Crosby, Malkin connection is pretty strong. Yeah. Crosby did say that he wanted Malkin to be there as long as he was there. Yeah. So,
sure. Yeah. So you know what I like too is when Crosby's in the lineup, they don't really lose that much. I mean, yes, I don't want to go down that road where they don't lose a lot. He's a great player, but I think Malkin even picks it up more when Crosby's not in the lineup. Don't you think?
For sure. I mean, statistically, even when either one of them is out of the lineup, the other usually is even better.
Yep.
Like they both seem to understand and can raise their level. Yeah. I think. Here I am doing exactly what I've said. I want to talk about Malkin, but I'm going to talk about Crosby.
Sure.
But Crosby's strength is his ability to find extra levels when they're really required. And on this big night last night, when it was a very emotional night seemed to be for everybody. 1,000 games and so forth. Crosby steps up. 4-point game.
Totally.
Yeah. There were people in the preseason power rankings of individual players that didn't have Crosby in the top 10.
Ooh.
Like, I just don't see that. He's still the man. Like, he's not. Connor McDavid is clearly more talented. He's more dynamic. He's faster. But Crosby is still a superstar.
Oh. Well, if I was to pick one player that's not a goaltender for one game, I'd pick Crosby. Yeah, he knows how to win too.
Yeah, he's been there, done it. And you go in a lot of buildings in Detroit. Crosby is absolutely hated.
Oh, is that right? Is he?
Yeah,
here in New York, he is. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it just speaks to what a competitor he is. So when you're hated, it means you're doing something right. Definitely. They don't hate wimpy players.
Yeah.
So. So anyway, I thought that was kind of a special night last night, and I'm glad to hear you're going to put Malkin on your all Laidlaw team, or he's not.
The good Laidlaw team, right. Definitely. Yeah. Yes, I definitely want him. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Well, good to hear that. And so you're going to have 2 Penguins on that team because I know you're going to take Crosby.
Yep.
On that team. So.
Yep, absolutely.
What about Ovechkin? Would you take him? He rose up.
Oh,
So,
Ovechkin, absolutely, yes,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And I wouldn't have been like that years ago with the Russian players. But those guys, there's no difference now. The competition level is right up there. They used to be like the Canadians, Americans, whatever. I thought they competed harder than the Russians and the Swedes. No, that's not the case now. So not at all.
Yeah.
Hey,
Go ahead.
just Susan's touched on one point here that I thought was really interesting. I don't know if you saw this or not. It's getting a lot of play here in New York. Zach Wilson, a young quarterback for the Jets, did not play well yesterday at all. Had, I think, a total of 2 yards in the second half. And when he was interviewed after, he really didn't take, like some of the other players, I think it was a wide receiver or something, was really critical of himself, or maybe a special teams player saying, I've got to play better, I've got to play better. But Zach Wilson didn't do that at all. I think they asked him point blank, did you hurt your team? And he wouldn't take any ownership of anything that happened. And it's interesting that Susan asked that question because it relates to hockey as well. You know, that's a bad thing for especially a quarterback that's supposed to be a leader of the team. Man, when the rest of the guys now walk in that locker room and they see he's not taking ownership, it's clear he played terrible. I mean, there's no question about it. But it's the same thing in hockey where, listen, guys are going to have bad games. You're going to have bad stretches of games. But you got to take ownership for it. If you're denying that you're hurting your hockey team by not playing well, especially at that position. So I thought it was interesting in a comment by him after.
Well, it's interesting in the hockey world, and I think you can speak to this better than I, but I have walked into players who believe the opposite of that.
Yep.
And I'm going to give you an example. Back when Chris Osgood has talked about when Mike Vernon came in and won, one of the things, and Chris Osgood was a young goalie, Mike Vernon said, don't ever admit that you had a bad game. Never. Never publicly.
Wow.
You just go out, you do your job, you do your thing every day. And, you don't go out there and say, it was my fault. I did it. He goes, don't ever do that.
Really? Wow. That surprises me. Wow.
Yeah. So
was there logic behind that? Or that was just his.
Yeah. The logic on that is obviously, the fan base will then perhaps start to think of you as a guy that, if you say you didn't get it done, then maybe you don't get it done on days when it's could go either way, or, you don't want to suggest that, you always want people to believe you're on top of things, even if you don't.
What if it was like that in the locker room, though, too? Would he do that in front of his own teammates, you think?
I don't know. I think that was more for the talking to the media.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
But
anyway, and maybe that's a good point. And maybe Zach Wilson did that in the locker room. Maybe he was in front of his teammates saying, listen, this is what I said publicly, but I need to play better. His own teammates.
Yeah. Although I think there is something when a captain stands up. I mean, we've heard so many NHL captains say, we've got to play better starting with me. And your coaches say that all the time.
Yep.
We need to play better and we need to coach better.
Yep. Totally.
It starts in here, in this room. So, and I think when you do that, everybody says, yeah, all right, we're in this together. So,
totally.
So anyway, I want to talk about Thanksgiving in the context of the NHL.
Okay.
And first of all, I'm going to admit that I feel like an honorary Canadian because this year, which is I think the third consecutive, I'm double dipping.
Oh,
now,
did you?
Now, not the way that the Canadian NHL players sometimes double dip, where they celebrate both Canadian Thanksgiving and American.
Right.
I'm double dipping because we had a Thanksgiving on Saturday for Terry's family, and then one of our daughters showed up. And then for the real Thanksgiving, we're going to go up to northern Michigan where there's 2 feet of snow, and my daughter has a ski lodge place, and we're going to eat up there. So I felt like an honorary Canadian because I know some, not all, but some Canadian NHL players will celebrate 2 different Thanksgivings.
Now, the full turkey dinner, or what did you guys have?
Yeah, we did. We had a Thanksgiving dinner, a lot of vegan things. It was fun. Speaking of not admitting anything, my son-in-law made vegan bread, and he announced that during the thing. The bread is all vegan, he said. And Terry said, you should have never said anything. His wife is the only vegan there. Right. We have vegetarians, but no vegans. Right. And he goes, why? Why wouldn't I say that? He says, well, because, it'll sort of influence how they, taste it, and they would never notice otherwise. And, I had eaten some bread. I knew it was vegan, and I said, it tastes exactly the same.
Oh, really? How does he make it then?
I don't know how he does it, but
what if he uses chickpea flour?
Yeah, he used some sort of different flour, but mostly what it is, it's the eggs that gets things. Although there are some things, my daughter gave my wife a list of accidental vegan foods. And those are, and I've heard this before because I know vegans laugh about it. An Oreo cookie is vegan.
It is. Wow.
Yeah, because they just don't. I mean, they didn't set out to make it vegan, but they don't use eggs, and there's no milk. There's no milk. Oh. So, and not all potato chips are, but Better Made sour cream and onion potato chips are vegan.
Oh, so, interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then the other one that just the vegans do like is the Ghirardelli brownie. Yeah. So,
wow.
Which is So,
what is keto then? The keto diet is it? But it's more fat, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess so. I'm not as familiar with that, but
yeah, our diet goes out the window on Thanksgiving and Christmas, though. So you get the chips and the dip and turkey stuff.
Yeah, yeah, my wife was making a vegan chip dip. Yeah, she's making for her Thanksgiving a shepherd's pie.
Right.
And you can make it two different ways, vegan. You can either use the Impossible Beyond plant-based meat, or you can make it with lentils. I think she's doing the Impossible.
Interesting. That's the thing. If you're pretty creative, you can make just about everything that's vegan. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And some of it, you don't know the difference, and I really enjoy it. I don't have any problem with it. And then some of it,
is that right?
I struggle. Yeah.
Right.
So anyway,
so if your wife is vegan though, are you vegan yourself? You're not.
Oh no, not at all.
Right.
No.
Okay.
No, but I do try to eat vegan food with her whenever it's tolerable.
Yeah.
So I hate to use that word because it makes it sound like the other stuff is horrible. And,
right.
There's certain things though, like vegan cheese, and even my wife will admit that. That's just ridiculous.
Oh, is it really? How do you make vegan cheese? What is it?
It's actually made out of cashews and like cheese sauce is really a cashew sauce.
Oh, okay. Well,
anyway, let's get off that. I don't know why I went down the tangent. I wanted to talk about Thanksgiving with regard to, now, as you know, historically, what do we say? We say that if you're in a playoff spot on Thanksgiving,
right,
you're got a real good high degree of probability to be there at the end of the season, that you're going to get in the postseason. Now, for those of you who wonder what that percentage is, I looked it up. And it's 77%. Last year, for example, and was right on the money on it last year, or pretty close. There were 16 teams in a playoff position based on, it's not necessarily points because teams play on even number of games. So you go by percentage of points won. Okay. So in other words, you may be short on points, but you'd played 4 less games today. So anyway, so that's who we say was in the playoffs. Last year, there were, of the 16 teams that were in a playoff position on American Thanksgiving, 12 of them. So 75% of the teams made the playoffs, and 4 did not.
Wow.
Only 1 in the Eastern Conference, that was the Boston Bruins, were out of a playoff spot and got in. So now, here's my problem with all that. I write that kind of stuff all the time because it's fun. People talk about it. And in the betting world, it's really an important thing. It's all math. I mean, people bet thousands of dollars over what's happened in the, over a 50-year period, and probability and math and all that. But really, we all know that past occurrences have no impact on future events.
Yeah.
So I don't know, as a player, like, what did you think about when one of those things, like, you'd play a team and they hadn't lost to them in 453 years, or whatever those to us,
it meant nothing to us, right? Because it's a whole different team altogether. Like when they go back that far, I know you're exaggerating there a little bit, but when you go back like years, it doesn't even matter. Right. They have beat this team in 7 years, so that doesn't matter. But
here's the only thing I would say, and this is really what I want to get you to weigh in on. I think it's sort of has an impact on the psychology. We all know psychology does impact games. So I'm just saying, let me use this as an example. The Maple Leafs know they haven't gotten out of the first round in a very long time.
Yep.
And even though that wasn't the same guys, but it gets written about. So you're in that, there's pressure on you, the fans want this and everything else. don't you think it does sort of have some impact on your?
Well, in that case, yeah, if things like if you're good, that's a great example. So if Toronto's a good team and everybody's saying, listen, they should advance to the playoffs, they could potentially win the Stanley Cup. And then if something, especially at home, starts to go wrong, I think then it does really. I think that's the case, right? If you're a team though that is, I'm trying to use a different example, but no, yeah, if you're especially in a city like Toronto, there's all the talk. You're right. Here we go again. As soon as you lose a game, now it's going to happen all over again. So yeah, that is true.
Yeah, I mean, I think all that kind of stuff does sort of impact. Like if like I just think of the yips, in golf, guys that can't make a 1-foot putt, or in baseball when I think it was Steve Sachs couldn't throw from second base to first, and it just gets in your head.
Yeah,
and you can't. I mean, I think some of these streaks can, I think for the most part, like you aren't playing a game thinking about, well, we haven't won it forever. I mean, you forget it. But I'm thinking leading in there, you're thinking, boy, we got to win this game. Jeez,
I'm starting to think through things again. Yeah, it is like that. Like the Islanders for us, every time we played them, we lost in the playoffs.
Yeah,
during their run for the Stanley Cup, and I felt. Like I remember one year Kenny Morrow scored in overtime. And I felt like we were up 2-1 playing in Madison Square Garden. They came back and won that game 2-2, and then they won the fifth game back in their rink. Yeah, I think I do remember like thinking like, geez, we're pretty good, but man, the Islanders are winning cups every year. It's in your head. You can't help it.
Yeah, no, I mean, and psychology is important. I mean, you think about through the years, and I remember watching a baseball game, and Al Kaline at that point was an analyst, and he was a great right fielder, and he was teamed with George Kell. Both of them were Hall of Fame players, and it was late in the game, and they were talking about defense, and George Kell, who was the third baseman, said, when the game was on the line, I always thought, just don't hit it to me. I don't want to be the guy to make the mistake. And Al, just matter of factly, said, geez, George, I'm surprised at that, because when the game was on the line, I always want the ball hit to me.
Yeah, is that true?
I trusted myself more than I trusted anybody else.
That's
true.
He
didn't say that, but was the impression. And I think, confidence really goes into it. I years ago, it's probably been 40 years now, when I was a young reporter, I did a story on a high school baseball coach who taught players to do self-hypnosis. And he had a pitcher who went from being just an average pitcher to being dominant. And the part of the issue was that he could never get comfortable on the mound when he was pitching. And he taught him to hypnotize himself to feel like the same feelings he would get when he'd sit in his living room when he was most comfortable.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah, but the problems was, though, and it happened during the game, is he would throw the pitch, and then he'd walk out where the door of his living room was. And that's how he got back in, and then he'd come in the side door.
Oh.
And he fell off the mound, which would have been through the wall of his living room, and he was totally out of whack. They took him out of the game. So
I had that hypnosis or hypnotist on, and she was talking about that, how she had one client, her husband snored all the time, so she couldn't sleep. So she convinced her that snoring was a soothing sound, so she would go to sleep based on his snoring. So I really do believe in that stuff. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, So, I mean, you're such a positive wave guy. You believe in all that. I mean, if you believe in positive waves, you have to believe in negative waves. You got to get rid of those.
So. Well, the way they explained it to me was your subconscious mind is developed from the third trimester in the womb up until like 7 or 8 years old, and during that period of time, that's your subconscious is fed certain things, whether it's all positive stuff or all negative things, and then there's kind of a guard in your subconscious mind, so it protects it and holds all that stuff in there, but that's guiding you on your the way you feel about life. But they do say through hypnosis, they kind of takes that guard down, and now you can retrain your subconscious mind. That's the theory behind it. So, yeah, I do believe in that totally. Yep. I think there's really science behind it too. Yeah.
Yeah. And let's talk about shifting gears here. The New Jersey Devils. My theory, fastest team in the NHL. I don't think anybody's faster. I mean, I haven't seen every team yet this year, but I've seen a bunch of them, and I've watched a lot of TV. And every time I watch New Jersey, I feel like I'm at a NASCAR race. Woo, woo, woo. They can move up and down the ice.
Definitely. Well, and James Patrick, who's a good friend of mine, former teammate, coached with Lindy Ruff for several years. And he really thinks the world of him as a coach. He thinks he's a fantastic coach. So whether that's, he's been other places. Maybe this is the right team for him. Maybe he's learned things along the way, but he really likes him as a coach. I think he's part of it too. But they are fast. Yeah, definitely.
Well, like I said before, they ought to, in New Jersey's arena, put boxes at all exits so that people can write their apology letters to Lindy Ruff for saying he, should be fired. So he's really done a good job with that team, and I think it helps. Though, I mean, this is one of the cases when you look at how this team is built. It's obvious that they've been built for speed. And they've got another Hughes, who's another race car, coming as well at the end of the season. Although, defense, different animal. We've talked about this before, and by that I mean, you bring in a forward out of college and he's fast, and you might catch lightning in a bottle a little bit. You can spot him on lines and move him in. With the defenseman, you can't hide him.
No hiding.
No hiding. So if he's not ready defensively, it doesn't matter how fast he is.
And that's the thing too. Like sometimes it just takes experience for a player. He can still be a good player, but those first 2, 3, 4 years for a defenseman, he's just going to have up and down nights.
So, but anyway, I'm a believer. I don't know how you feel about him, but I'm a believer in the Devils.
Well, I hate to say it this way too, but I always feel like PK Subban in the last couple of years was kind of weighing them down a little bit. Not that it was destroying the team, but he was a big figure. He's a big guy, eating up a big chunk of the cap and everything. And him being gone, and again, it sounds terrible for him, but I wonder how much that helps kind of pull the team together too. But they're good. Actually, PK Subban is going to be working on ESPN now too, right?
For sure. And but if there was ever a player born to be on television, I think it's him.
Yeah, totally. Yes, he is good.
So it's interesting. How many hours are you going to spend watching the World Cup?
Can you watch soccer? I just can't even watch soccer.
Yeah, I can, but not like I'm not as, my son and my wife will be watching many, many games.
But she coaches soccer. She coaches soccer.
She did. She doesn't even work. She's retired. But she coached club soccer, and she coached high school soccer for almost 2 decades.
Right.
And my son played college soccer.
He did?
Yeah. So he's a good player, and he's still playing now. He's an adult. He plays in it's fun to hear him discuss it because he plays in an all Hispanic league. So all of his teammates and stuff speak Spanish, and so the strategy is all in Spanish. But he's an occupational therapist, so he has had to learn Spanish because he's in a Spanish area in Chicago because most of his patients speak Spanish. So he can pick it up as well. But the style of game is so different. Like they like him because my son is a ball distributor, and he said almost everybody on my team is a scorer. So he said, they're all looking for me to give them the ball. So they treat me well,
That's
so.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
I guess, I'd watch, it's the World Cup. So if the U.S. is playing or Canada's playing, I guess I'd watch some of that and see how they're doing. But the U.S. team isn't supposed to be that good this year, are they?
Well, no, they're never good, not on a world stage. That's the thing. The other thing that intrigues me about this, and I used to have great conversations with Igor Larionov, like our sport, compared to soccer, it's just a blip.
Yeah.
Like we're just a nail, the fingernail, compared to them. And it's just such a huge sport. The betting on the World Cup, the television ratings, and they count their ratings in the millions, and we still count ours in the thousands. So
wonder why that, because it's not really that exciting of a game. Is it that everybody can just pick up a ball and play, so they're all
that's it, and they all grow up playing it. Right. You can play it anywhere. You don't. In fact, the ones who play in small quarters, they're usually gifted players because you got to learn to. We talk about stick handling when now there's no such thing as a phone booth, but you used to say stick handle in a phone booth. Well, if you can handle a soccer ball, in close quarters, you can be well. But I think the international rivalries, I think play a role too. I mean, it's hard to be competitive in a lot of sports for small countries to compete with big countries in terms. But in soccer, it doesn't seem to be the case.
Yeah, very true.
So like I think it's really remarkable that Finland is so good in international competition in hockey when they only have 5.5 million people.
And competitive players, like all the Finns that I played with, are like really competitive guys, right? They're tough mentally,
Yeah, and all those. I mean, Sweden is the size of Michigan.
Right? That's right too. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just really remarkable that these countries do so well in international. Yeah, and really, our sport has just grown so dramatically compared to when you and I first became involved with the NHL in the 1980s. I mean, it was so small.
Yeah.
I remember. Go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking back. There's 21 teams when I played. Like thought when I was playing, to think that there'd be 32 teams in the NHL, they said no, it's never going to happen like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I remember a college professor. I ended up doing a story on it. Did a story on creating what he called the hockey belt, and he was a geography professor, and he created he basically logged where all hockey players came from and where the TV ratings, and then he had this giant map, and it was colored in, and it was just like a little belt that went from Minnesota down through Michigan, and then there was a little sliver, down in Ohio, and then it would get into Pennsylvania, and it wasn't all the way through Pennsylvania, but it would cut across to Philadelphia, and then there was Massachusetts and Maine, and then nothing else was colored in. Right. If you did that today, we'd have a pretty good block in California. Dallas has a pretty good program. Florida has a really, and Southern Florida of all places has a really strong program as well. And Ohio has a place. Even Carolina has sent some.
Arizona, a little bit in Arizona now too.
Yeah, a little bit in Arizona. So the belt is a little bit different now. And
I haven't noticed around where I am here in Connecticut, the hockey's gotten much better coaching, better organized. It's still some of the things, players jumping around from team to team and everything, but the game has gotten a lot better. Yeah, really good.
Well,
and the women's hockey is good too.
Well, women's hockey is the fastest growing sport.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it went from like there were 0 college programs, 20 years ago, and now there's, I don't know, 50. I'm totally making that number up, but I'm just saying it's large number, and there's really in growth, and the level of play is so good compared to where it was. But just off the subject here, but I'm staring out this window where we have like I said, up in northern Michigan, we have 2 feet of snow. I mean, it's not Buffalo. We're not having 5 or 6 feet, but there's a couple feet up there at my lake house. We got pictures from our neighbors, and it's completely snow covered. My deck's covered and all that. Right. And that's only 2 hours west of here. Right. But anyway, it just reminded me, I just read a story, and for those folks who live in sort of the rural area where deer hunting is a thing, in Michigan, deer hunting is very big.
Yep.
As it is in Canada. I think, isn't deer hunting big in Canada? Yep. And the story was how it's really on the decline, and it's become a problem in Michigan because we have a lot of deer. Right. And like I have, they show up in my backyard. And it's become a problem. And I went to a funeral on Thursday, and I ran into a guy I know well who's a big hunter, and he was talking about going hunting. And I said, I just read a story about the fact that deer hunting is on the decline, and it's causing problems in the state because they count on the deer hunting to keep the herd low enough that it's not causing problems. And he goes, it is a major problem, and it's the same problem we have in sports. Young kids aren't getting into the sport. They want to play video games. They want to be online. They want to be involved in social media. They don't want to traipse around the woods with a gun looking for deer.
Sure. Never thought of that. That's true.
And he said it's a real problem. And I thought, like, wow, everything just, it's all intertwined.
It's all, everything's changing that way, right? Yeah, it's
right. Right.
That's why I'm good. I'm happy to see that hockey's still doing well, the youth hockey. So it seems like there's still lots of kids playing hockey. Hardly
Yeah.
ice around here. So
Well, I mean, I know youth sports have all taken a hit. You can still find programs, but when my kids were young and I was involved in a lot of youth sports, we had just in our area, we had almost like 450 kids in our program. We had 300 kids in our soccer program. Well, that program doesn't exist anymore. No,
really? Wow.
Those kids went, have assimilated into other programs, but the travel program that my wife coached in, my son played in, it doesn't exist anymore.
Wow.
So it popped up, but we don't have the same number that we used to have. It seems.
This Susan Brooks person, she's a very intelligent woman. You know that? Very intelligent. Great looking meal yesterday. So we got some shrimp, made a creamy sauce with some chickpea pasta, spiced it up a little bit with a little sriracha in it. Oh, it was good. Lots of vegetables.
Sounds good.
You are one smart woman, Susan Brooks. I'll tell you that.
Well, if I had Thanksgiving dinner on Saturday, what did I have on Sunday?
Leftovers?
I did. Yeah.
Yes. Nice.
Yeah, we did.
So was there a turkey? There was a turkey then?
There was a turkey for sure. Not that my wife ate it, but there was one.
Now, was she cooked the turkey?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
She was all over it, and
so she's obviously a very disciplined woman. So even though she may like the taste, and she remembers the taste of turkey and the smell and everything, she won't cheat on that.
No.
Well, she's got discipline.
She would never do that. No. She. I mean, it's really a health and an ethics thing for her. She doesn't. So she's pretty stringent about it. So.
Yeah, she seems like she's a disciplined woman, right? Like if she lives her life by a certain code, and that's it.
Oh, for sure. And I say this all the time, but we just can't be more opposites. Like I'm a big television watcher. My wife is not.
Right.
There's some things she'll watch with me.
Right.
She watched the Lions, with me, but like I'll pretty much watch all kinds of movies, and it has to be one that she's really interested in. So she's not one just to sit down and say, "Well, I'll see if I like this movie."
Right.
No. So
yeah, she likes being busy, doesn't she? Like she
does. Yeah, and she is. She's always busy. She's always got projects. I'm sitting here at a new desk. It's actually an antique desk that we've had for a long time.
Right.
And it's because my other one, the legs started to go. And of course, my wife spotted it from just walking in. And so yesterday she said, "You got to help me bring this desk down." She moved this desk down. So I'm on a more sturdy desk now. She turned that other desk upside down and she's assessed it. And then she's going to work on it and
nice.
Get that desk back.
See, I love that she can just look at it and figure it out. Okay, this is common sense, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, she just checked the issue and she's trying to figure it out, and she can do all that kind of stuff. Like the only thing that scares me a little bit, like she fools around, she can rewire lights and things.
Right.
And, I always say, did you? My job is to say, did you make sure you flip the fuse off? And
and she probably looks at you like, "What do you think I'm a dummy?" Like,
yeah, but I mean, as you're getting older, you forget things. You forget steps. So anyway, I had a couple other things I wanted to talk about in hockey, and that is we're starting to hear a drumbeat more about Patrick Kane, and there was a story that I read last week about the fact that there's been a suggestion that perhaps, and this had not really been mentioned before, when you talk about Patrick Kane, you usually hear the New York Rangers mention the Edmonton Oilers and the Colorado Avalanche. The idea for the Rangers would simply be to reunite him with Panarin. And the Oilers just getting one more weapon, for them. And Colorado, again, you pull out all the stops to try to win back to back. But, all of a sudden now Boston's name has entered.
Oh, wow.
And the Boston has played so well. And if you think about it, there's some logic to that. Right. Because, and we've talked about it before, but we talked about it in a negative way. Like we were saying, that Boston team, Marchand and Bergeron are a year older.
Yeah.
And now they're saying, because they're a year older, we got to go all in. Look how well we're playing.
Well, especially they had all those injuries at the start of the year too, right?
Yeah. It is funny though. all the projections that were passed out of it when those guys came back, they all came back. Now, are they all Supermen, or did they just exaggerate a little bit about how long they were going to be gone?
Good for you. I never thought of that. That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So because guys do come back earlier, they work hard at it. But excuse me, I'm losing my voice a little bit. But it would be interesting, boy. Patrick Kane in Boston.
See, I think Boston, as much as they're playing great, I think they're a team that needs him more than those other teams you mentioned. I think listen, they're obviously a good hockey team, but I never would have predicted that they would start the way they have this year. Well, New Jersey too, but
yeah.
And he's got a no move clause in his contract too, right? So he can.
Yeah, he does. And the biggest problem, of course, with him is he's a $10 million player. So even if you eat half the salary, you got to take 5. But it doesn't take much. Like all of a sudden, Jake Muzzin, like they're talking about, like he may be done.
Yeah.
So now now all of a sudden Toronto's got $5+ million or whatever he is, maybe 6,
right.
5.5, some whatever it is, and that's a big deal. I mean, that's a really big deal that they have $5.5 million, and it happens all the time. You lose a good player, and that suddenly opens up your cap space.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Nobody really has space for Kane, but everyone just assumes they eventually will.
Right. I see Murray play really well for Toronto the other night. Right, he's back and playing. Murray play back.
Yeah, I mean, he did play well. Boy, I don't know why I'm losing my voice. But I still worry about their goaltending.
Yeah, I agree totally. Yeah, it could be great to start with, and then you just don't. It's a consistency. You just don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah. Okay. Well, one of the big surprises for me, we talked about the Penguins, winning last night against the Blackhawks in the 1,000th game, but they have just struggled. Like they keep giving up leads. They've got all kinds of issues, and I'm starting to wonder. I mean, at some point, when you're an older team, and they are an older team, you start to lose, your superiority. And, is this the year?
And they've been through a lot of hockey, though. That core group of guys, right? Do they lose their fire a little bit as you're getting older? But they are competitive guys. All 3 of those guys, Letang, Crosby, and Malkin.
Well, our good friend Eklund did a study about teams that got 30 points in the first 20 games of the season, and there were 18 or 19 of them over the last 10 years, right. And 17 of those, or 95% or whatever it is, 90-some%, made the playoffs. Right. And if you go 27 points, there were like 50-some, and only 2 didn't make the playoffs out of those. So if you take that into account, you're going to say the Devils are going to make the playoffs, that they're not going to blow it. And that means that somebody's not going to make it. Yeah. And that's got to be either, Washington or Pittsburgh or the Rangers.
That's if Washington doesn't make it. Well, that's a talent lineup. But
yeah, I mean, if I had to handicap that group, I mean, or the Islanders too. I mean, we don't know that they're going to make it. But I think there's a chance for all 4 of them not to make the playoffs. I mean, you got to play better than they have. Let's put
no question. And you would think that they're going to. Like, you're watching the Rangers all the time. You think, okay, these guys need to pick it up. They're a better hockey team than where they're playing right now, but they still have to pick it up. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at those 4 I just mentioned, the Rangers are the best team. I mean, they got the goaltending, they've got the defense in terms of talent, and then they have up front.
Yep. That's why I think it's just when you watch them play right now, they just don't play with that fire, right? I mean, and maybe part of it is too that they were so used to last year. Shesterkin played so well last year that he stole a lot of games for them. And we talked about before that bad defensive play that they had sometimes. So.
Yeah. I just I always end up so surprised, and I shouldn't be, but I mention it again because every time I open my Twitter now, and I see how badly Gallant gets beat up. Yeah. It just reminds me of what a harsh world it is if you're a coach or a kicker or somebody that where things some poor guy in a wind-blown game, a kicker yesterday missed 2 extra points, and he was taking his beating yesterday over that. I was thinking how hard that must be. So
I know, and they get vicious too when they're on Twitter or something like that. People don't.
Oh, they're right. Well, I've had it happen to me. I mean, when you're a writer and
sure.
you say things, it's not fun. I mean, but it's kind of rougher on your family than you, because you take so many beatings, and after a while, you just kind of shrug. So
and it gets personal too, right? Even more so now, I think it gets personal.
Oh yeah. So, and one of my relatives recently became an athletic director, and he was just telling me, dealing with the parents. You experienced that as a coach recently, where you've got, you're dealing with parents on playing time. Cuts.
With the old line is the kids are great, just too bad they have to come with parents, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've certainly heard the stories of school districts that play their games at 11 o'clock because they don't want any parents to be there.
Yeah, that's a shame. It's like that. It's a shame. It's like that too.
Yeah,
I think what happens too, in my experience with coaching, very often the parents will come back to you 10 or 15 years later after you've coached their son or daughter and really apologize to say, "Listen, I see what you meant.
Yeah,
way too important."
I mean, I never, I was president of a youth athletic association for more than 10 years, and I never once had to remove a kid from competition, but I removed parents from, basketball courts and from soccer fields a dozen times.
Oh, is that right? Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I just say, you got to leave. We're not continuing the game till you leave. You got to leave. It's that simple. Yeah. My wife told the story when they're when you coach, you need a way to distinguish when you're telling players where to go, and the way the players always wanted is there was coach side and parent side,
right?
Because the parents were on the other thing, and that's how they defined it.
Right.
And my wife actually had to go and have a meeting with the parents because nobody wanted to play parents' side because they heard their parents screaming at them and everything else. Everybody said, you got to put me on coach side. I don't want to be on the parents' side.
That is bad. The rink that we have here locally, I remember I was coaching, so the parents are always on the other side. The benches, were on one side, parents on the other. And it was amazing sometimes the kids, they could see the way their parents are acting. And the kids are like, either they got caught up in it themselves, following their parents' lead, or else the kids were just totally embarrassed. We had to stop the game a few times. I go grab the other coach and say, listen, we need to go over and lecture the parents, thinking it was going to save the day. It didn't change the thing. They just kept doing the same thing all over again.
Oh, no. Yeah, they think they're completely justified.
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah, yeah. I don't even think they're even aware of the way they're acting, right? That's the one big thing.
No, it's hard. Yeah. Anyway, well, we've covered a lot of bases here, a lot of different sports. We hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back on Wednesday, and there'll be a lot to talk about. We'll get into a little. Maybe we'll have Tom walk us through his turkey preparation.
Yes, that's a long process. Got to make the pies and everything.
Yeah, definitely. And it's the only time he would even consider eating a pie.
I know. Yeah, I hope my sons are coming over with their girls, so I hope they take some of the food home. So, actually, it'll be the first Thanksgiving with the new dog too, with my grandson. Maverick. My son and his wife got a dog.
What kind of dog?
Golden Retriever. Yeah, Golden Retriever. Yeah. So he gets away with stuff at Grandpa's house. He doesn't get with at home. So.
Yeah. And then as we move along, we'll talk about the fact that in my family, Christmas will be on December 31st on Christmas Eve. Every year we have to move it around, and we have. I wouldn't call them intense, but they're lengthy negotiations to figure out one day where we can get all the groups home, because that's important to us. Doesn't matter when we do it, as long as everybody can get home. And then this year, the only time we can get everybody together based on work schedule, everything else, is on the 31st of December, and so that's when our Christmas will be. And then on the regular Christmas, I'll be in Chicago with one of my kids and their 3 grandchildren, soon to be 4, though. I'm waiting on the 6th grandchild. Could be born any moment now. So.
Oh, really? Congratulations there, Grandpa. Good job. Yeah.
Sounds good. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. If you want to read me, I'm at DetroitHockeyNow.com.
And we'll see everybody on Wednesday.